Africa is ready for the same kind of trend. Next. Now, I will not take too long on this house, because this is the house actually we are supposed to build. This is the draft house that we want to see coming out from this workshop. We want to see solutions coming up in the education sector, in the agriculture sector, in the governance sector, in healthcare, in business, especially financial services, tourism, payments. We want to see smart solutions coming up in the environment sector, infrastructure, and cities. One little thing I would like to mention, which is a little bit controversial, you see a pillar called Smart Girls. So Smart Girls, actually, it's much more than girls. Some people thought it was just a little bit more sexy to call it like that, but the idea is to use ICT to empower our women, especially the women in our rural areas, to help them do businesses, take part into governance processes, access education, reproductive health care, preventive care, and so forth and so on. So that's a Smart Girls, and I'm glad to see the person nodding at me, the person who introduced that component. It's Samia, that is our co-MC this morning. So this is really a co-creation process. We've got 10 pillars. I think there are too many. I've been saying these are too many for me. If we need something that easy for people to understand and take away, we probably need to reduce. But you might think there are too few as well, because development is multidimensional. So you are free to remove, to combine, to add, to make taller or shorter. It's really in your hands today, and we look forward to the different ideas that are going to contribute to building this house, which we hope to live in and welcome others to join us. But the house has also foundations, a foundation, and I think it's just common sense to note that you can only build this when you have a basic layer of shared infrastructure and services. The trend has been in the past that people have gone out and built their own silos. Smart Rwanda is saying today that we should share everything and reduce on the amount of duplication and overlaps and cost that goes with. Another layer, of course, is skills training, and then on top of it is innovation. But when it comes, let me go back to the shared infrastructure and services. There are things that are very expensive. Setting up infrastructure is expensive. So if you have a piece of infrastructure, you need to make sure that you utilize it as much as you can. But when you say infrastructure, many people don't think about things like mobility. So infrastructure extends from connectivity, broadband, to things like mobility, cloud, computing, and big data, and so on. Anything that comes to in that area is known as infrastructure. Now let me stop here before I start getting boring. I'd like to invite you. This is just a step in a big journey that we've started. In fact, I remember it started on Skype, and then I traveled to Washington end of February. I was so glad to be hosted by our friends. We had a similar crowd, which generated the draft that you can see here. And then from here, we hope to take this to a next level. We are hosting an international conference in October called Transform Africa. That's why I wanted to mention that that our president, His Excellency Paul Kagame, is the co-chair of the Broadband Commission. In the last meeting that took place in Mexico, President proposed a major shift in the way we look at the ICT sector. He suggested that we move from connect to transform. So we picked up that idea in partnership with ITU, World Bank, and our and our other partners. And we have started working on this Transform Africa. What is the next slide? It's supposed to be Transform Africa Conference. It's going to take place between the 28th and the 28th of October and the 1st of November. I believe this room will host some of the sessions, and we are saying that Africa's future is delivered today. But it's a journey next, and it's a journey of transformation that we hope to undertake together. Thank you very much, and I hope I look forward to the next 2 exciting days.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for setting the scene. As you can see up on the up front, says Connect, Innovate, and Transform. And so the Minister helped put that into context. I'd like to, at this point, welcome our next principal speaker. That's Caroline Tack. He's the Rwanda Country Manager for World Bank. Very briefly, Caroline has held many senior positions in the World Bank. And at the moment, of course, she's the country manager. And prior to that, she worked with the UK Department for International Development. It's a great privilege to have you speak to us today. Let's put our hands together to welcome World Bank Country Manager. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Honourable Minister Sengemana, Honourable Minister Gatete, Excellency Huang, Ambassador of Korea, Excellency Hackerson, the Chargé d'Affaires from Sweden, my many distinguished friends and colleagues in the room from government and from the development community here, and all of these international experts which have come from far and wide to share their experience with us. It's my very, very great pleasure today to offer a few welcoming remarks. I'm going to be brief. I'm possibly one of the least qualified technically people to be speaking of ICT in this room. I consider myself to be somewhat backward with respect to modern technology, but I am very appreciative of it and use it very much in my daily life, even if I require the assistance of my teenage children to manage my telephone and my communications devices. But I want to welcome you all here today. I find this is an extremely important event. I believe the agenda is extremely exciting. We have all kinds of expertise in this room, people who've been highly creative, highly innovative in bringing solutions to generate positive, sustainable change. And that's really what we're talking about when Minister Phil is talking about transform. That's what we mean: positive, sustainable change for poor people in Rwanda. I want to acknowledge with great gratitude the generous financing of a Korean trust fund, which has enabled us to host this event. The government of Rwanda, who's obviously also co-financing the event with us, and colleagues from the private sector who have very kindly supported the receptions that you'll attend later and the food that you may enjoy later on. Now, I'm not going to talk for long, but I do want to take a moment to congratulate the government of Rwanda on the extraordinary achievements that have taken place in the field of ICT over the past few years. When one looks at the numbers, it's really quite outstanding, I have to say. You know, you look at the figures for mobile penetration. It goes from, and the Minister will correct me if I get this wrong, but from around 8% to around 60% in a matter of 5 years. Connectivity via broadband has escalated, both in terms of the speed that people have available to them and the price, the affordability of access. I understand that the price has fallen by something like 75% over recent years, from around $700 to less than $150. This is an amazing achievement in a short period of time. And the accolades pour in. Rwanda has been acknowledged in a number of different networks for its outstanding achievements in this field. The Ookla Net Index and the ITU publications have consistently nominated Rwanda as a very high performer in this respect. ICT has brought FDI, $44 million worth of foreign direct investment over recent years and created jobs. We see the very ambitious targets that the government has set for job creation. We see thousands of jobs being created in the IT sector recently. But none of this matters unless it gets used for good purposes. And what we've seen in Rwanda is a real mushrooming of innovative use of these technologies within government systems. I mean, none of us like paying taxes, but if we have to pay taxes, then, except perhaps the Minister of Finance, but if we have to pay taxes, and to have electronic formats for paying those taxes makes life so much easier. There are services now that serve to transform the relationship within government, between government ministries, between government and citizens, and between citizens as well. And we can see these innovations popping up all over the place. You go to K-Lab, you see it's one of the coolest places in town to drink coffee. I mean, I myself feel extremely old when I walk in there, so that's not a good thing. Maybe you could find some more old people to sit around there, Minister, but you find a buzz of energy and creativity, and we need more of this. Now, the next day and a half will provide ample opportunity to discuss, to have, to brainstorm, to generate new ideas, some of which will be crazy, some of which will be implementable. And I look forward to coming back for the closing session and hearing what has been done. I'm going to hand over the floor now to Minister Gatete, I think, when the MC turns up. Patrick. But thank you very much. I look forward to hearing about your deliberations tomorrow afternoon, and I wish you all very exciting and innovative discussions. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. The good news is this is not really about IT as much as it is about development and transformation. Thank you very much for those words. At this point, I'd like to invite Ambassador Huang from Korea. Rwanda and Korea enjoy a special relationship, and it's been growing from strength to strength, especially in the area of ICT. And it's a great privilege to have His Excellency Ambassador speak to us this morning. Let's put our hands together and welcome the Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Honorable Ministers, World Bank Rwanda Country Manager, and my colleague from Sweden, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here with you this morning to give a welcoming remarks on the occasion of SMART Rwanda Days. I'd like to thank all those who made this event possible, and I extend a special thanks to the World Bank and the government of Rwanda for enabling this event. Rwanda is steadily moving towards its vision of becoming an information-rich and a knowledge-based economy and society and an ICT hub in the region. In this regard, today's conference is so timely, and I think that it will expedite the completion of Rwanda, SMART Rwanda. Korea is one of the most important investors and the contributors in the field of ICT in Rwanda. Here I'd like to introduce South Korea's endeavor to co-create a smarter future for Rwanda. Just last week, as Honorable Minister Sengimana indicated, Korea Telecom formally entered into a 25-year term agreement with the government of Rwanda to roll out the 4G LTE broadband. Reliable high-speed broadband is perhaps one of the most important enablers of a smart Rwanda. Initially, Korea Telecom will invest $140 million in cash on 4G LTE broadband, while Rwanda government's investment include assignment of the extensive national fiber optic network assets, spectrum, and a wholesale-only operator license. Since 2007, Korea Telecom has also supported the Rwanda government to install the 3,000-kilometer national fiber optic cable that has helped Rwandan experience fast, reliable, and cheaper internet services. My government also extended support in the form of capacity building in critical areas, including cybersecurity, in order to help ensure the safety of the national ICT investment. On top of that, Korean government established an ICT department in National University of Rwanda in Butare during 2008 to 2011. Furthermore, we have just started establishing an ICT Innovation Center in Kigali, which is $5.6 million worth of project to draw a roadmap on the ICT human resources education and venture incubation system development in Rwanda. Ladies and gentlemen, we have invested and contributed to the above projects because we strongly believe in the transformative power of ICTs and its ability to lead to accelerate growth and poverty reduction. It's also because we highly appreciate His Excellency President Paul Kagame's global leadership in ICTs. His vision and unwavering belief in the power of ICT is a crucial factor in transforming Rwanda into a favorite destination of ICT foreign investments, including those coming from Korea. With these investments, I'm sure Rwanda is planting the seeds of progress, economic and social transformation, and good-paying private sector jobs for the population. We will continue to invest in solutions that harnesses the power of ICTs to increase off-farm jobs, promote innovation among the youth, and improve the capacity of government to deliver services to citizens. We are also committed to support government of Rwanda's ambition to become a regional ICT hub. That is why Korea Telecom will together work with the government of Rwanda to jointly seek opportunities to extend the business model of the 4G LTE to the entire Africa continent. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will be discussing on a smart Rwanda and its importance for economic growth. In our increasingly interconnected and global era, innovative, information-driven challenge is more important than ever. It is the key to new jobs creation for Rwandans and sustainable development of Rwanda. That's how Rwanda will ensure a high quality of life for the people and future generations. To achieve this goal of co-creating a smarter future for Rwanda, Republic of Korea have taken steps and will continuously make its own efforts in various sectors such as agriculture, education, health, and public administration, etc. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, finally, for your information, I'd like to remind you that my government established the Korea Trust Fund on ICT in 2008. The $15 million trust fund has supported various World Bank projects, including today's roundtable, which demonstrate cutting-edge approach to the development programs with a focus on ICT. The Korean Trust Fund is integral part to the World Bank work, and perhaps the World Bank remain a force for transformative development outcome worldwide. Now let me close my speech by inviting you to the open discussion on how we co-creating a smart future for Rwanda. Your fresh ideas and inspiration will be a good asset for all of us here today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, would like to invite the Honorable Minister, Ambassador Gatete, in charge of Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning for Rwanda. Ambassador Gatete, I'll just say a few things that he's well known for. The most important one this morning is that he's one of the drivers of ICT in this government, in this country. Prior to becoming the Minister of Finance, he was the governor of the National Bank and did a tremendous job transforming a national bank to be ICT enabled. And as he moves to the Minister of Finance, we see the same spirit of using ICT to drive national transformation, especially as we go into the next EDPRS. Honorable Minister, I would like to hear from you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you should not expect that I would be one of the experts here, for sure, despite what the MC just said. But I think I came here because I'm one of the largest consumers or beneficiary of everything that you are doing. We are trying to narrow the gap between us and you. Initially, we used to think that the digital divide was between the rich and the poor countries. But actually, we realized that the biggest gap was between you and us who are non-IT experts, especially at every country level. But we are getting smarter. We are getting to understand we are getting to understand that actually this thing is not, there is nothing magic about it. I remember initially when we started, and when you had very, very few experts at the time, and people like my friend Sam Husi would tell us all the keywords that you could find, and none of us understood what they meant. But at the end of the day, when we come to application, we could see actually they make sense. And these words, they still keep coming. As you're mentioning SMART Rwanda, and when I was looking at the program, you see lightning talk and you get scared. You hear cloud computing, you try to understand what that means, and then you find it's just ordinary fighting. So many other terms that are so scaring in nature, trying to keep us on the sideline and say this is just an area for smart people, not for everybody. But for us, we're also getting there. We're just getting closer to you and narrowing that divide between you and us. And as we try to use more of the, or benefit from the IT, we are really getting closer and closer. And I believe if we can manage to take a country like Rwanda and use all the knowledge, all the tools, and involve everyone, I think we can make significant progress. And that's why the benefits are just beyond what maybe you can imagine. Just as an example, if you see bringing the entire country together and dialogue is always very, very difficult. But in Rwanda, we have many, many examples where just in the last weekend, when the president was meeting the youth, he was able to speak to all the youth in the whole country, looking at each other, where they could ask questions. And actually they did, they say, we very much appreciate, Mr. President, this facility that can allow us to talk with you face to face, regardless of where you are in the country. Some were here in Kigali, others were more in the rural areas, but they were dialoguing, they were talking with the president. They were organized, following, asking questions, the president can see them face to face, and they could see the president, they could dialogue. And where else would you get this kind of facility whereby a head of state would be able to dialogue with the youth all over the country face to face? We have also seen this during the national dialogue that we have around November, December, where the whole country, here in the country, in the rural areas, in the diaspora, everybody would ask questions using any kind of platform. Whether you're just speaking on the phone, using Twitter, using Facebook, using emails, any method, but at least you'll be able to dialogue as a nation. And this is really incredible in terms of the benefits, where you all discuss together. You can listen what each one is saying. Then you take ownership together. We have also seen it in the national retreat. We've seen it in elections. We've even seen it in the Rwanda Day. Now, where the whole country comes together, whether you're in London or in Boston or in Paris or anywhere, the whole country is together. The Rwandans in the country and the Rwandans abroad. So we've seen that even beyond the normal activities, that we as Rwandans can talk to each other, can contribute ideas, because we have the technology that can do that. So that's why I was saying we are no longer scared, because we can see the benefits, and we are happy to benefit from this kind of initiatives. Now, for today's SMART Rwanda, I think so much has been really done in terms of saying, let's have the infrastructure. We remember when we started our Vision 2020, and our president was emphasizing, saying, no matter what we do, we cannot achieve it without IT, and he came up with the NICI plan. Initially, we didn't know what that meant, most of us. And later on, we realized that actually, they were talking about all the development areas indirectly being facilitated by IT and helping it to make sure that we can improve the productivity. So by having the infrastructure, initially in the first 5 years after 2000, they started with sensitizing the people, saying, well, IT can be used in education, IT can be used in health, IT can be used in agriculture, it can be used almost in every area. Now we got to understand that actually that was true. And then the next 5 years, they laid the whole entire infrastructure, the broadband. Now, once it was in place, people had already understood the need for that ICT. And now they started putting together bits and pieces, saying, let's have the skills. The training started a long time ago. And that's why you see most of the people who are highly skilled in this area are mostly the youth, not as people of my age, but the people who are younger and who are getting smart, and we are trying to find our space to stay in business. But then the most important thing is that now at least we are backing it with the capacity of universities like Mellon University, which is backing it up, with the Technopole, which is also providing other skills, with the K-Lab, which is continuously innovating, and also trying to see how we can improve the access, how we can improve the services, this time in every sector. And that's why, in this case, when we came to our second generation of economic development and poverty reduction strategy, the second part of it, we are saying we need productivity. Because if you have to achieve the 11.5% GDP growth by 2020, progressively moving up, we have to make sure in order to sustain it, we need productivity, improvement in productivity. And as you can imagine, there's no way you can get this productivity unless you use the ICT in every sector to increase this kind of productivity that we need. We've come a long way. We have been almost doubling in terms of addressing some of the issues of the country in economic development. We've been trying to grow significantly, now from 2000 to end of last year, on average by 8.2%. Even last year when we had some shocks, we managed to grow by 8%. But at the same time, we had been reducing the poverty levels, all the way from 77% in 1995 to now below 45%. And we are progressively reaching the MDGs. By the year 2015, we expect to have really exceeded, to have gone below 30% in terms of poverty levels. And that's why our programs are more or less focusing on economic growth, by especially focusing on economic transformation. We are also looking at the rural development, which has an impact on poverty reduction. But then we cannot achieve the two objectives without skills, without productivity. And that's why we are focusing definitely on IT to see how it can contribute to this. So the SMART Rwanda, which is coming up also in line with the EDPRS II, is saying, how do we achieve this? How do we provide the productivity that is required by using IT almost in everything? Because the IT really, for some of us who have benefited from this, it's just incredible. Let me just give you an example in the economic, how it has had the economic impact. When at the central bank, we started the Rwanda Integrated Payment Processing System, initially, it was very difficult to do business because we are not interlinked. But that was a system that was linking all the banking system, from the branches to the headquarters to the central bank, plus all the settlements and all the information that were coming back and forth. And by introducing that, it was very, very tough to introduce it because it was affecting the public life. But when it was in place, then you could be able to get all the information flows on the money, where it is, how it moves from one place to another, how you link the commercial banks to the branches, to the circles, to the MFIs, to almost everything, and you can see the entire flow of that money. And that enabled also the commercial banks to this time come up with very sophisticated core banking systems, the one, the T24 that you know, the Flex Tube, the other. So they came up with very, very strong system that you use that you could only find in the West. And by having those systems, then you can do now anything on that. That's why the payment system that was being put in place in terms of using cards, the e-banking, the mobile banking, the agency banking, all these things were also possible. And at the same time, it enabled this time the link between the central bank and the capital market by using the Central Securities Depository, which was another platform that is the only one that you can find in Africa that is doing the settlement for the public and private securities. Whenever you are trading on the capital market, whether it is in bonds, whether it is in stocks, whether now it is on the commodities exchange, it can accommodate all that. Most recently, when the NASDAQ came to test to see how we can establish the commodities exchange, which is now established, they are building on the CSD that we have now to be able to make sure that we can also do the settlements for the commodities exchange, which is really a big advantage. At the same time, because of that system, which is very, very strong, we are able to, again, be the first country, together with Mauritius, to succeed in terms of linking with the regional payment settlement system within the COMESA region, where we do now, which links with the COMESA region in order for the trade to be settled in one day. And initially, to trade, for example, if you wanted to trade within a country, within the COMESA, combining everything from approving the letters of credit, it would take about 4 days. And it would take like 5% of your trade. But with this platform, it takes 1 day. It's done by the central banks. At the same time, the cost is 0.25% of your trade, from 5%. So you can imagine the savings because of the technology. Where the first country together is Mauritius to go live. Other countries are still trying to see how they can go live. Now we are working on the East African payment system, where we can settle now in our core currencies. The one for the regional payment system, we are settling in dollars and euros. But for this one here, it's linking all the 5 East African countries where we can settle in the local currencies. That means the central banks would have the currencies of others, and then we have a system that is interlinking, that is very direct, that is cheaper, which can facilitate people not having to change from your local currency to US dollars and back to the local currency, but this time to go straight. So it reduces that cost of foreign exchange. And this is a platform really that has been enabled by the IT. If you didn't have the IT, I don't know where it would be in terms of providing the services. But by having that system, you get all the information in terms of how the banking system is doing. And having all that kind of information, then you can supervise, you can regulate, because you have all the information. You can see where the risks are in terms of cross-banking system, and also between the insurance companies, the pension, and the banking system. You can see it because you are getting the information very, very much easily. And also it allowed the money to stay in the banking system and for the transmission mechanism to be visible. Once you have a clear transmission mechanism, in other words, seeing how the money is being moved here and there, It means that you can easily do the monetary policy. You can take decisions on how to make sure that inflation does not continue to rise because you have the information. No matter how smart you are, if you don't have that information, there is little you can do because you just simply don't have it. And that way, decisions are really more ad hoc than being real. So that's really one of the use of this kind of technology that we are talking about. And now we are moving further beyond that. We are saying we need private sector to invest, whether from Rwanda or from abroad. And that's why you come up with a checklist of the ease of doing business and saying, what's the checklist? What do we need to do? Should the people line up really to get some of the papers, or they can get it online, whatever papers they need? Do they need, for example, in the case of the banking system, let me come back to that. One of the problems was that you want to get a loan and you want collateral. The collateral is in the form maybe of the building that you own. But then there are two areas. There is the ownership of land, which is in the land center. There is the RDB, which is giving you the certificate of saying you own this land. It's your property, you have the ownership. But then when you take the banking system, how is the bank supposed to know exactly whether, because they are getting two informations. But now it has been electronic. It has combined the information from the land center, the information from RDB, and that information is going to be accessed by the banking system, where you can even mortgage your property to 2-3 institutions because they can see how much of that property is being mortgaged. And then you can take that paper, which you call the asset-backed securities, and trade it on the market. You can trade it for anything. On the money market, you can trade it on the stock market, because this time it is electronic, it is seen. And that way then it's going to facilitate in terms of doing business, and also in terms of facilitating or making sure fast-tracking the entire business. So we are seeing really this one being helpful. So when we talk about services, we are talking about the business development services within the countryside, within the country, to make sure that people can just work electronically rather than taking a long time in terms of getting the services. Within the fiscal policy as well, we are seeing that in terms of collecting taxes, in terms of making different payments, definitely we are seeing the IT becoming the only tool. Whether it's from the customs, just crossing the border, getting that information, even as far as Mombasa, to the borders, to the final destination, at least we are getting that information. How people are paying taxes, now it's electronic. And now we are saying we should also have those machines that we normally see in the rich countries, where people can just pay, but after paying, because ordinary people have paid their taxes, also the company should make sure that they avail those kind of taxes to the government. We are now, in terms of accountability, we are also looking at how we make sure that all the spending of the government, up to the local level, is very visible and is very much accountable. And that's why the use of IFMIS, for example, is very, very crucial, that is going down almost to the local level. That's why we're saying, in terms of procurement, you should be able to see it in the system using the IT, regardless of where you are in the country. But this one here is being assisted by the use of ICT. Of course, you know the impact has had in education. You know the impact has had in health. Initially, we never used to know that it would play a significant role. But now we are seeing ICT almost in everything. And that's why we are saying, in governance, for elections, we are using IT. In interacting with ordinary people, we are using IT. In the way that the central government works with the local government up to ordinary person, we are using IT. In economics, in the whole economic sector, we are using IT. Social sector, we are using IT. Now, we are saying, in as much as you have the focus of economic transformation, how do we use IT to transform how we do business? And the way you do business means it can make it faster, it can make it easier, it can make it cheaper. And to go to the technicalities of how this can be done, I believe that's why we are having this conference, so that now everybody can sit down together and say, how does it work in Rwanda? How does it apply to every sector, to every part of our life, to make sure that we can transform this country using IT, which filters into almost every sector? If we can do it in Rwanda and make it work, I'm sure we can do it also in other sectors. And I believe that's why His Excellency the Ambassador from South Korea really has mentioned that we want to make sure that we make Rwanda, we want to give it a smart future, so that if Rwanda becomes smart in terms of implementing its vision using IT as a tool, then this would be an example that this can work for Rwanda. It can also work for other countries. So with these few words, I really want to thank the World Bank and the Republic of South Korea for supporting this very important event. But then we are relying on you, on your deliberations here today, to see how we can come up with a proper framework that can support our vision, to make sure that we sustain high economic growth, to make sure that we eradicate the poverty levels, to make sure that IT gap between you guys and us is very much reduced, that IT is for everyone, and is providing improved services to everything that we do. On this note, I just want to again thank you and wish you fruitful deliberation over the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I think if you doubted what I said earlier, you heard it all. At this point, would like to invite our panelists. I'll call them up and they'll take their seats. We've got 4 very distinguished panelists. They will do 3-minute commentaries each, and then we'll have an open discussion. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so with your permission and cooperation, I'll eat a little bit into our coffee break. But in order to not eat too much into it, let's introduce the panelists to come up. The first panelist is Jen Treadwell. Let's clap her hands as we welcome her up. She's the CEO of Design Gov, which is an Australian Center of Excellence for public sector design. Very long and impressive career in the World Bank and the public service. And also, she has some recognition in the ICT. She was the National CIO in 2005 and I Awards Woman of the Year in 2011. So we'll hear from her in a short while. The second panelist is Dr. Wanil Choi, who is a research fellow at the National Information Society Agency in Republic of Korea. Please come upstage. Let's welcome him. Dr. Wanil participated in the first eGov project in Korea way back 1985 to 87. He has more than 25 years experience in this space, and we'll be able to hear from him and learn from his experience. The next panelist is Paul Kukubo. He's the, let's clap our hands as we welcome him. He was the founding CEO of Kenya ICT Board. And since January 2013, he was actually also appointed as the first CEO of the newly established East African Exchange, which is based in Kigali. This was launched in Davos, Switzerland, by His Excellency President Paul Kagame. Nicholas Bergrun, famously known as the homeless billionaire, for those of you that know about him, and also Ambassador Jendai Fraser. And so, a great pleasure to have you, wide experience, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. And then the last panelist is Dorothy Gordon. She's the Director General. Let's clap our hands as we welcome Dorothy upstage. She's the Director General of Ghana's Advanced Information Technology Institute, the Ghana India Center of Excellence in ICT, and she has more than 20 years experience influencing information communication technology in Ghana and across the world, so looking forward to hearing from her as well. At this point, I'll pass on the floor in the order in which I called our panelists. So we'll start by hearing from Jen Treadwell. I think we have several microphones over there. And so we'll have very sharp and to the point commentaries, 3 minutes each. We'll start with Jen and work our way towards the right. Jen, welcome.
Thank you. And Waramutse, everyone, good morning. And congratulations. I think this is a wonderful experience, I hope, and also to your ministers. The things that I picked up from the presentations that I absolutely concur there is nothing new about ICT. It's actually about how you use it. There's nothing magic about ICT, but perhaps all of those acronyms that provide too much distance between real people and those who are implementing it. The issues around thinking big, starting small, scaling fast, absolutely. And perhaps what I would add, given that some of us were doing this about 20 years ago, learn from others, because their mistakes can actually be avoided if you actually draw on the lessons of the past. The whole area of sharing capability is something that is absolutely essential when the dollars or the Rwandan francs are limited. So that infrastructure that can be shared is absolutely essential, not just because it saves dollars, but because it does avoid duplication and a whole lot of unnecessary boundaries that impact the way in which businesses and communities and citizens can interact. The final element was around the collective and accountable governance. I think that it's pretty clear that there is a national plan. The Vision 2020 is what everyone needs in terms of a focus. The why is pretty clear in terms of increased productivity and reduction of poverty. But in fact, the how is the hardest for all of us, whether it be Rwanda or Australia or the US. Faster, better, cheaper, smarter capabilities for government, for citizens, for the countries are always easy to say. The making them happen is the critical point. And building on success is an absolutely useful thing, because there's a culture of understanding of the change. So obviously the examples within the banking industry here provide a template of sorts for other parts of the government. Shared infrastructure we've talked about. I think there was also a point around ICT being the driver of social and economic transformation. To some degree I'd agree, but in fact it's people who are the driver and the ICT is the engine. And it's the smart people, the everybody, who actually makes the difference to that. Their skills and their capabilities and their connections are important. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Good morning. I'm from South Korea, and I'd like to comment some. Okay, I'd like to comment some critical success factors in terms of our experience. It includes some commonalities and differences, maybe. First, I would like to comment strong government leadership, recognizing informatization as a key national development. The Korean government established a supervising and coordinating body under informatization policies under the president, and laws for supporting effective informatization have been enacted in the early stages. And one more component of success factor is that the center of excellence should go with government leadership, where private and public professionals work together to support government policy implementation. And secondly, as you know, aggressive investment based on clear goal setting. Now, in our case, based on the principle of choice and concentration, the government first selected areas in ICT, infra, and R&D that are likely to lead economic growth and to have profound impact to citizens' life. In the 2000, a massive investment to e-government project is made, amounting to annual budget of over Korean won 3 3 trillion won. It is equivalent to 2.8 billion US dollar. In particular, intensive investment was made to develop new technologies like such as TDX in 1986 and CDMA in 1996 and Vibro 2005, and as well as to foster ICT manpower. These items were risky but very prospect items. So in this juncture, the strong government leadership is needed to implement this kind of technology R&D. And and lastly, I would like to comment professional ICT R&D institutes and supervising body. I've heard that you have Rwanda have an RDB for ICT, and I think this has a considerable importance, especially in case that a country tries to achieve quantum leap through the new technology and method. For example, E3 and NICI in Korea, founded by government in 80s, have played critical roles in Korea ICT development. Especially members of these organizations has poured their energy and effort into their researches and tasks with strong patriotism, like localization efforts. And also, I add one more comment. The first welcome remarks, the minister said the three pillars, three important components: skills, access, and services. And I think this is very good point. And also, he said services should be have contents and applications. This is right, because you're having the catching phrase connect, innovate, and transform. But the first connect means we have certain contents between connections, and by the connections we have created value-added products and services. And so I think the services should be stressed in the case of first ICT development. Okay, this is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have the sort of unique privilege of speaking from two perspectives, from Kenya's and now from my new home, which is Rwanda. Because up to 2 weeks ago, I was just finalizing my assignment as Chief Executive of the Kenya ICT Board, and now I run the East Africa Exchange here in Kigali. So I'll talk from both perspectives. First of all, the whole shift from eRwanda to SMART Rwanda is very exciting because it places the right emphasis on applications and content, which is where the real value citizens will derive or come from. So it's something that's strongly endorsed, and we as an exchange are very much in that sort of space because we take infrastructure and use it to empower farmers to access markets, get better prices, and improve the supply chain using technology in terms of trading platform, technology in terms of warehouse receipts, so that when a farmer takes his produce in Rwanda to a warehouse, he can get a receipt, and that receipt, which is electronically produced, is a tradable instrument, a tradable financial instrument. And you can see the role of technology in this area. We'll use technology to improve even how warehouses are managed, so that the goods that sit inside a warehouse can become collateral themselves in terms of even managing stocks. So technology can be used great. And I think both ministers have given us excellent examples of this. Let me just talk about the Kenya experience for a minute and talk about the 6 pillars and just see how they tie to what Rwanda is trying to achieve. And it's fairly similar. In fact, I make a strong case, and I think Minister for ICT alluded to this, that there's a role for a regional approach, and actually a Pan-African approach towards some of these things, and maybe that's something that we should discuss. Talked about 3 pillars. In Kenya, they have public value, so the use of ICT beyond the obvious deployment of government services towards public value. Public value, I think, as alluded by very articulately by the Minister for Finance here, talks about when you take ICT and you take it and use it beyond what its citizens expect. And I think your example, Minister Gatete, of the use of ICT in real-time settlement across East Africa in terms of local currency, it might be seen as a small issue, but it's very substantial in terms of delivering regional trade. And that's the use of technology so that people can settle in local currency, so they don't expect to use foreign currencies to spend a lot of money in terms of buying unnecessary foreign currency. The other thing that we look at is ICT businesses, because one of the things that I would emphasize for Rwanda is look at developing your ICT businesses as part of this journey. Don't leave that alone, because one of the things that we reckon in Africa is that we don't always have to import businesses to be able to deliver our own solutions. I think we need to develop their own capacity, and this is an issue for across all of East Africa. And the third one is ICT as a driver of sectoral productivity, whatever the sector might be, and the exchange is an example of that. Just lastly, we also look at some foundational pillars. One is integrated country positioning. There's a role for country positioning, and I think Rwanda's done it very effectively. And when you talk about smarter Africa, that's also Africa positioning in terms of attracting international ICT investors. Second one is citizen inclusion and open data. We've not talked enough about this. I think the idea that citizens must be included. I know we're given an example of President Kagame's youth engagement. That is citizen inclusion. Those things are very important in terms of the whole ICT agenda. And the third one, and maybe this one is something we might talk about during this conference, is an integrated approach to infrastructure and data across East Africa. I think there's an opportunity for a discussion there, so that, for example, the data that comes out of national statistics in Uganda, national statistics in Kenya, national statistics in Rwanda, has the same basic data structure, and we can share data across sectors, whether it be agricultural data, economic data, finance data. This is very important in taking this idea of a smarter Rwanda forward. I'm sure we'll be talking more towards as we go in the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First, let me say what a pleasure it is to be in Rwanda again and to see how much progress is being made, and really to congratulate you, because I think there's a lot that other African countries can learn from in terms of how you've approached the whole issue of IT and development. I think that you demonstrate the importance of good leadership and clarity of vision. I was very pleased to listen to you and to hear about smart villages. I really like that, because I think, Paul, that addresses your issue of citizen inclusion. If you make sure that you actually have smart villages, then it means the citizen is involved right from the village level. So I personally really like the idea of smart villages. I have a dream that, you know, you will see an old grandmother in a traditional dress who may be supervising something, cooking on a traditional stove, screaming at her grandchild, "Bring my device back," whichever device it is. I'm actually searching for this and communicating with so-and-so, wherever it could be. So then you see that people really own the IT, and it is actually transforming their lives. Now, most of you would remember, because they told you just a few minutes ago, I'm from Ghana. And we're very proud in Ghana that our first president can be called the father of Pan-Africanism. The fact is that IT can really drive that Pan-African agenda by linking us up. At the same time, it can also drive a recolonization of Africa in different terms. We are very much dependent on foreign technologies as we are implementing our IT today. It is very important that we have a clear agenda for how we are going to transform that dependency on foreign technologies today to actually having vibrant IT businesses that are serving our IT needs. And that is one of the reasons that I'm part of the Free and Open Source Foundation for Africa, because we know that with open source solutions, we are actually able to start creating and developing alternatives that meet our needs and can satisfy the needs of all our citizens, giving us a real ownership of the information technology that we are actually deploying. So that when you hear, and I know the bank has this statistic they're always talking about, you know, you improve internet access by a percentage and you see economic growth. But if you don't have the linkages in the economy, if you are not actually buying from companies within your economy, I'm not sure that you're going to see the transformational impact of the IT. So those were just a few comments that I wanted to share with you. I know I'll be speaking tomorrow, so we can talk again.
A round of applause for all our panelists. Thank you very much. We're going into an open discussion right now, and if you thought that the lightning talks would start after the break, we're actually going to start with lightning comments right now. So it has to be short and sharp. And to kick us off, I'd like to call on two people who are with the audience here. One of them is Sebastian Fu, who currently works with the World Bank, but previously worked with the Singaporean government. And the marketers like to say that you make your point in 30 seconds, but I actually give 1 minute each. So I'm going to be very generous. Sebastian, 1 minute.